Tonight, we begin with an announcement that Social Security recipients had feared, hoped for, and in many cases simply never expected to see. A development that unfolded not over months of bureaucratic delay, not over years of legislative gridlock, but in a matter of days. Days that changed the financial reality for millions of Americans living on fixed incomes. Days that meant the difference between paying rent and falling behind. Days that meant the difference between filling a prescription and going without. What the Social Security Administration did this week crossed a threshold that budget hawks in Washington had hoped would never be breached. And when that threshold was crossed, the SSA did not hesitate. They responded with urgency, with precision, and with a directive that is now sending ripples through every bank account, every direct deposit schedule, and every mailbox across the country. If you receive Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or any federal retirement benefit, you need to stop what you are doing right now and pay attention, because what just happened could mean an extra deposit is already on its way to you. And if you don't know about it, you could miss it entirely. For months now, there had been signals, not official press releases, not formal congressional announcements, just signals, that the Social Security Administration was preparing something significant. The SSA has been consistent, yes, but they have been quietly methodical in their consistency. Their payment cycles have followed a certain rhythm, a calendar, almost a clockwork precision. But what set off alarm bells among benefits analysts and financial advisors this past week was that the rhythm shifted. Experts who monitor federal payment schedules know the indicators. The adjustment to the master payment calendar, the modification of direct deposit batch processing windows, the sudden appearance of a secondary disbursement code in SSA internal communications, the quiet update buried deep inside the official SSA Gov payment schedule page, all of that changed almost overnight. And whenever the Social Security Administration adjusts its payment infrastructure without a loud public announcement, it means something is about to land in your bank account that wasn't there before. Recipients across the country began noticing something unusual. Online forums dedicated to Social Security beneficiaries started lighting up. People checking their bank apps were seeing pending deposits they hadn't planned for. And financial counselors who work with retirees and disabled Americans started getting flooded with calls asking the same question. Is this real? Did I actually get a second payment? The answer, as we are now confirming tonight, is yes. For a significant portion of Social Security recipients, a second payment has been added to the schedule. And if you haven't checked your deposit date yet, now is the time. Earlier this week, benefits tracking analysts detected what they described as a calendar compression event, including a disbursement overlap that had not been seen in the Social Security payment system in over a decade. These are the kinds of scheduling adjustments that the SSA only implements when they are signaling something very specific. A catch-up payment for a delayed cycle, a supplemental disbursement tied to a cost of living correction, or a calendar-driven double payment month where two scheduled cycles fall within the same 30-day window. Observers weren't immediately sure which category this fell into, or whether it touched all three at once. But what they did know was that the SSA was changing its disbursement posture. And when a federal payments agency shifts its disbursement posture without a blaring headline, even by a small measure, every financial planner, every benefits coordinator, and every retiree living paycheck to paycheck pays attention. Here is the core of what happened. The month's calendar alignment created a situation where certain Social Security recipients are scheduled to receive two separate payments within the same calendar month. This is not a glitch. This is not an error. This is a known but infrequent occurrence built directly into the SSA's payment schedule. And millions of Americans either don't know it exists or don't know when it applies to them. The second payment is real. It is confirmed. And whether it applies to you depends on a very specific set of factors we are going to break down right now. The guidance issued by financial advisors and Social Security advocates this week was not routine. It was not a standard reminder. It was not a symbolic update to a newsletter. It was urgent. Source after source, advisor after advisor described the SSA's calendar adjustment as significant, time-sensitive, and, perhaps most importantly, something that could cause real financial harm if recipients don't act on the information quickly. Because here's the risk. If you don't know a second payment is coming, you might not plan for it. You might not adjust your budget. You might not coordinate with a caregiver, a family member, or a benefits manager who handles your finances. And in some cases, recipients on income-sensitive assistance programs need to know about incoming deposits in advance to avoid inadvertently triggering a compliance review. The SSA's payment system did not hesitate when it generated this second disbursement. In fact, the way the schedule was structured this period is among the most favorable alignments we've seen in recent memory for beneficiaries. Here's what we know. Within days of the calendar trigger activating, the SSA processed a secondary batch of payments targeting recipients in specific birthday-based payment groups. These weren't the standard mid-month payments. These were supplemental cycle disbursements, processed through the same direct deposit infrastructure that the SSA only activates when a full secondary payment window opens. Tonight, benefits analysts confirmed that the SSA launched secondary disbursements across multiple recipient categories, including those in the Wednesday payment group that had recently shifted positions on the calendar due to a federal holiday banking adjustment. The SSA moved before any confusion could compound. They processed Group 1, birthdays on the 1st through the 10th. They processed Group 2, birthdays on the 11th through the 20th. They processed Group 3, birthdays on the 21st through the 31st. And in this particular cycle, 2 of those groups received or are scheduled to receive payments in closer succession than normal, effectively creating what recipients are calling a double month. This is what makes the current moment so important to understand. The SSA's calendar adjustment wasn't just administrative, it was financially actionable. It represented the kind of disbursement structure that directly impacts how much money arrives in your account and when, in a way that could affect everything from auto-pay bills to grocery budgets to medical expenses. And recipients who understand this, who know exactly when their second deposit is scheduled, can plan accordingly. Those who don't know, they may either be caught off guard by an unexpected deposit, or worse, they may assume a payment was missed when in fact it's simply arriving on a different date than usual. Here is what you need to do right now. Go to ssa.gov. Log into your My Social Security account. Check your payment history and your upcoming scheduled deposits. If you see 2 payments listed for the current month, or if you see a deposit date that doesn't match your usual schedule, that is not an error. That is exactly what we are describing tonight. And here is where the story becomes even more important to understand at a deeper level. Benefits analysts now believe that the SSA's payment calendar is structured in a way that virtually guarantees this kind of double payment month will occur. Yet the vast majority of recipients are never clearly told when it's going to happen. The SSA wanted to design a system that distributes payments evenly across each month to avoid bank processing overloads. But instead, the opposite effect emerged for individual recipients. The agency didn't simplify the experience for beneficiaries. They created a staggered birthday-based system so precise, so compartmentalized, that even longtime recipients get confused when the schedule shifts by even a few days. Financial counselors speaking with benefits advocacy groups under anonymity described the SSA's communication approach as technically accurate but practically invisible, a way of publishing all the right information without making sure the people who need it can actually find it. But recipients who know where to look proved this week that they are both informed and prepared. Their financial decisions were not only timely, they were precise enough that some were able to pre-schedule bill payments, move money into savings, and coordinate with caregivers, all before the second deposit arrived. That kind of preparedness matters because it shows something critical, that Social Security recipients are not passive beneficiaries simply waiting for whatever arrives. They are active financial managers doing their best to navigate a system that doesn't always communicate clearly. As reports continued coming in throughout the week, we learned more about the scale of recipients affected by this secondary payment event. Retired workers receiving standard Social Security retirement benefits are included in the affected disbursement window. Disabled Americans receiving SSDI payments are also in the affected group, depending on their birthday and their enrollment date. SSI recipients, among the most financially vulnerable Americans in the system, have their own separate payment schedule, and some are seeing a secondary SSI disbursement this month as well. This wasn't just a minor calendar footnote. This wasn't just a technical scheduling note buried on a government website. This was a real, tangible, additional deposit of money, arriving in bank accounts, loaded onto Direct Express cards, and delivered in paper checks to millions of Americans across every state in the country. And the ability to access and use that money effectively is the one thing that separates recipients who thrive on a fixed income from those who struggle. And that gap has never been wider than it is right now, in an era of elevated costs for food, housing, utilities, and healthcare. Remember, Social Security recipients were once told the payment system was too rigid to accommodate any calendar flexibility. They were told that double payment months were a myth. They were told that the birthday-based payment schedule would always mean one payment, one date, every single month without exception. But tonight, the exact opposite is happening. A second payment is confirmed for this cycle. Recipients in multiple payment groups are seeing deposits arrive earlier or later than their standard date, with a second disbursement following within the same month. And the SSA's own website, when reviewed carefully, confirms that this scenario is a documented, expected feature of the payment calendar. What makes this moment so critical and so urgent is that this second payment is arriving at a time when Social Security recipients are under more financial pressure than they have been in years. Retirees want their monthly payments to cover basic living expenses, and increasingly, they don't stretch far enough. Disabled Americans on SSDI want consistent, predictable income they can plan around, and any calendar disruption creates anxiety. Survivors and dependents receiving benefits want clarity on when their money arrives so they can manage household budgets. And SSI recipients living on the lowest monthly amounts in the system want every dollar accounted for, every deposit confirmed, every payment date locked in. Recipients across all of these categories are balancing these needs while navigating rising costs, reduced purchasing power, and a financial safety net that was never designed to be a person's sole source of income. And when a second payment appears, or when the payment schedule shifts, in that context, it is not a bureaucratic footnote. It is a lifeline. The SSA's official payment schedule, now updated on ssa.gov, was designed to signal that the agency is not willing to allow confusion or misinformation to leave recipients in the dark. Officials have said plainly that the payment calendar for this period is operating within expected parameters, and that any deposits arriving outside of a recipient's usual date window are consistent with the published schedule. That is careful institutional language for, the money is coming, and we told you when, even if we didn't make it easy to find. You don't usually see that level of deliberate calendar engineering from the SSA unless something with real financial significance is at stake for a large number of people. Meanwhile, Social Security advocates and benefits counselors addressed their clients and online communities in clear, direct terms this week. They said, check your My Social Security account today, not tomorrow today. They said, if you see a deposit date that doesn't match your usual schedule, do not panic and do not call the SSA to report an error until you have verified it against the published calendar. And they said, this second payment is not a mistake. It is not a glitch. It is your money, arriving on a schedule that the government set, and you deserve to know about it in advance. These are not merely reassuring talking points. These are statements from advocates who understand just how high the stakes are for Americans trying to survive on fixed incomes in a high-cost environment. Here is what makes the situation even more consequential. This second payment development is not isolated. Along with the calendar-driven double disbursement, there are also active conversations in Washington about additional Social Security changes on the horizon, including potential COLA recalculations, adjustments to benefit formulas, and ongoing debates about solvency and funding. SSA administrators are also updating fraud prevention protocols that could temporarily delay some payments. Banking system changes related to federal direct deposit processing are affecting delivery timelines for some recipients, and proposed legislative changes to the Social Security earnings test and retirement age thresholds increased policy uncertainty across the beneficiary community. All of this is happening within the same news cycle. When the government moves multiple pieces of the Social Security system at once, it means something larger is underway. And staying informed is no longer optional for anyone who depends on these benefits. Benefits analysts are now considering several possibilities for the months ahead. One is that the SSA is preparing additional calendar adjustments tied to upcoming federal holidays, which will create similar double payment windows in future months. Another is that the SSA is attempting to front-load disbursements ahead of a potential processing system upgrade that could temporarily interrupt normal payment flows. A third possibility, the one generating the most discussion among benefits policy watchers, is that the SSA is quietly preparing recipients for a more fundamental restructuring of the monthly payment schedule, potentially moving toward a unified payment date for all beneficiaries rather than the current birthday-based stagger. But today, informed recipients took the uncertainty off the table. They didn't wait for a letter in the mail. They didn't rely on secondhand information from neighbors or social media rumors. They didn't hope their bank would notify them automatically. They logged in, they checked their accounts, they confirmed their deposit dates, and they planned accordingly. What we are watching right now is a test of access to information. The SSA wants to see whether its online tools and published calendars are sufficient to keep recipients informed without direct outreach. Recipients want to show that they are capable of navigating the system if someone shows them where to look. Advocates want to prevent a situation where the most vulnerable beneficiaries are the last to know about money that is already theirs. And policymakers want to prevent the kind of public confusion that turns a routine calendar event into a national story about government dysfunction. Tonight, benefits monitoring organizations are now tracking the second disbursement rollout in real time. They say the vast majority of affected recipients will see their secondary payment arrive within the expected window, and that direct deposit recipients will see it before paper check recipients. They say any recipient who believes they were supposed to receive a payment and have not should wait the full processing window before contacting the SSA, because many deposits are in transit and simply haven't posted yet. And they say the SSA's decision to structure payments this way is likely part of a broader effort to reduce payment clustering at the beginning and end of each month, intended to stabilize bank processing loads and reduce the risk of delays during high-volume periods. But recipients are not sitting back and waiting. In fact, the response from the beneficiary community this week, proactive, informed, and organized, sent a message to the SSA that people are paying attention. And it sent a message to Washington that Social Security recipients are not passive. They are watching, they are tracking, and they will not be the last to know about their own money. As the coming days unfold, we expect more details to emerge about exactly how this secondary payment event will play out for every category of recipient. But what we do know is that the information is available right now for anyone willing to look. It protects recipients from being caught off guard by an unexpected deposit that disrupts their benefits coordination. It empowers beneficiaries to plan their budgets, their bill payments, and their financial decisions around accurate information. And it ensures that no one loses access to money they have already earned simply because they didn't know it was coming. What happens next will depend on how the SSA communicates future calendar events to the public. If they improve their outreach, this moment will be remembered as the week millions of Americans finally got the benefits clarity they deserved. If they don't, the advocacy community and independent media have already shown they are ready to fill the gap. And tonight, for the first time in recent memory, the Social Security payment calendar appears to be working in recipients' favor. The system is quiet. The deposits are processing. And when the government is quietly putting extra money into people's accounts, it means something is happening that deserves your full attention. Because tonight, Social Security recipients learned something they should never have had to learn from anyone other than the SSA itself. Your money is coming, and you have every right to know exactly when. You have every right to plan around it, protect it, and use it. And you have every right to demand that the systems designed to serve you actually communicate with you clearly. This story is far from over, but tonight one thing is clear. A second payment was added to the schedule. Millions of Americans are affected, and the only thing standing between you and that deposit is knowing when to look for it. Log in to ssa.gov, check your My Social Security account, confirm your deposit date, and we will be here, watching every update, every calendar change, and every policy shift as the next phase of the Social Security story unfolds.